Welcome to On Navigating the Abyss. We are Teri and Catherine, two necessarily trauma-informed mums of young people who were both inspired to train as conscious parenting coaches. We're bringing this podcast as a way of sharing our ongoing learning, insights and clarity we've gleaned, along with some fresh perspectives, with parents who might be on similar paths to us. So we really hope you join us.
Welcome, everyone. In this conversation, Teri and I are talking about dealing with partners that have different approaches to parenting, struggling with parental guilt, repair, boundaries, and just overall how we show up with our tools we've gathered. We hope you find it helpful.
Hey, Catherine.
Hi, Teri. Good to see you.
Yeah, I think today we've discussed this, and I think we're talking a little bit about the parents, right? Us. What we bring, what the other parent brings, if there are two parents or two caregivers, of course, but what we bring to the party.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in my situation, and also I know a lot of the parents, mostly mothers that I work with, are part of my group. One of the big struggles is the co-parenting, which we know that definitely impacts our kids' healing journey and our own peace of mind. And so, I was reflecting a little bit this week. I was having some conversations with my husband, and there's been, I think, for my daughter, a couple things that he's contributed. I've contributed many things myself, of course, to her struggles, including, particularly around expectations.
Right.
For her and who she needed to be and what defined success, largely because of, so my own conditioning and what I found made me feel valuable and useful in life. Mm-hmm. And I think he brought a lot of fear and anger from his own past. And so I'm at a point now, I think, where, we've both contributed and done some of our work. And I think, as often happens, I feel like I've done much more work than he has.
I can relate.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's still, he shows up, he goes to family therapy. He's there for my daughter. He loves her more than anything. He has shifted how he sees her. He has made every attempt, given where he is in his life and his journey, and what he's capable of, to be supportive.
Yeah.
Right. And I think probably that's the case of a lot of dads, right? It's undeniable that they love their child.
Absolutely.
And so right now it's interesting because our focus as a couple is keeping her going, keeping her alive, keeping her moving forward in her life, which I know you can relate to.
Definitely.
And it's the priority.
Yeah.
And, I think I struggle too with, in my mind, this idea of accountability as part of repair with her. My perspective, right, is that I have tried to really acknowledge my role in the trauma I've caused or pain I've created in her life, and tried to acknowledge that from, being, as she calls, an almond mom and not wanting her to eat 5 bags of chips.
Yeah.
Or telling the school that she couldn't buy Oreo cookies. We lived in Mexico when she was in primary school, but that she couldn't eat Oreo cookies and she couldn't buy them at the school store, and all these things, which she said contribute to her eating disorder, right? Mm-hmm. And my expectations around her reading and her school performance and all the things that gave me a sense of value, mm-hmm. and a sense of worth. I, of course, wanted that for her, which was misguided.
I want to interject. I'm not going to say anything except I so relate to all of this. So I'm just going to learn that. I don't want you to be doing this on your own. And then I'll let you carry on.
Yeah. And so I've tried, I've tried to talk to her about it, and I've said I've acknowledged it. And I think sometimes because I acknowledge, I don't feel the guilt anymore. I've discharged the guilt and the shame and all of that. I mean, not completely, but a lot of it. And I feel it's okay to acknowledge I made mistakes, and I made some terrible mistakes.
Absolutely.
And I'm human, and I'm still a good person and a good mother. But it's taken a while to come to that point. I don't know if you've...
Of course, I understand exactly where you're coming from. For so long, there was just this sense of needing to beat myself up. There was just kind of this self-judgment that just would come upon me. And until such a point as I learned, and it had to be pointed out to me, that this isn't helping anybody, actually. And truthfully, were you doing the very best with the tools that you had at the time? everybody was exactly where they needed to be for us to learn what we needed to learn along the way, right? So yeah, totally relate. You got me. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I deal with her father, and his anger presented in things like there was a feeling of walking on eggshells in the house.
Mm.
There's times when she hit adolescence and she was, really rebelling, and there was things said and things which she talked about being really damaging.
Right. Saying those things, that's wonderful, and it speaks volumes about your connection now.
Yeah, and she'll say the things that damaged her. And I feel like, I guess part of me wants him, and he hasn't denied things, but he hasn't wanted to acknowledge them or to process them or to, I think, ask forgiveness. I feel in a way that I have, because in his mind, and I think often, and this is part of the patriarchy, right? I think for him, he's either a good man or a bad man. And for him to acknowledge that he did damage and to really ask for forgiveness means that he's a bad man in his mind.
Mm.
And so I struggle with this, right? I struggle with that because I want, and this is the problem, I want them to repair.
Yeah, of course.
And I want to feel like I have a partner that's on the path with me.
Yeah.
And that's not saying this is just who I am, I can't do more, and part of it, I don't know how, it's just wanting to not push back and, but part of me wants more. And then what, and it's not my lane to be in. I know that it's not my job to expect anyone to change.
Yeah.
But with your child involved, with your partner, it's hard.
It is.
And then add your child, a high-risk child, and it's so hard to stay in your lane.
It's really hard. You and I were talking about this even before we jumped on camera, about how much this is all about letting go. And I hear you. There's a couple of things that spring to my mind, and I travel the same road as you with all of this. My daughter has a super sensitive father, my husband, and we are still together. We are a unit of 3, and he has the most phenomenal tunnel vision to do with his work and how he shows up. And it makes him borderline genius. It's incredible, right? It's incredible, the work he produces and how he shows up in the world. And at the same time, that single-mindedness lends itself to a certain style of hands-off parenting, for sure. I sometimes have regarded myself as solo parent more often than I'd like to mention. And yeah, I'm hearing you, that saying, that it's not my lane. So for the word that kept coming up, we've talked about it many times, is sovereignty. Again, it's a word that was, introduced to me by Shefali. And when she talks about the sovereignty of the child, of the young person, but then I was thinking about it when you were talking about, in our own right, as mothers, our own sovereign journey. What truly can we control? What are we supposed to control? Well, we know the answers, right? We know we've got to stay in our lane. We know that the only thing that we can truly control is ourselves. And yet we have the possibility of 2 people parenting consciously, getting on this journey and doing the best that we can. There could be 2 of us doing that, and they just aren't. There just isn't. Terrible English. And and what about that? It's hard. And then I hear once again Dr. Shefali saying it only takes one conscious parent. It only needs one conscious parent. Well, that's not saying I only need one conscious parent in this family. It's saying it only takes. So that young person, that child, is going to be in the world having an experience of mum and having an experience of dad, or mum and mum, or dad and dad, or and whoever it is that's involved in raising that child, they're going to have an experience of them all. And that's their journey.
Yes.
That's their sovereignty. Yeah. So for me to be doing all the things, even though I know I did tell my child just to grow up a few days ago, there's things that this is not about always getting things right, in inverted commas, but doing my level best and doing the work and showing up the best way that I can, repairing and working on myself. And then my child will go to my husband and then have an experience of him, and often come back and say, oh my God, Mum, I can't believe it when he does this. Dad's just da 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 da. or talked to me and didn't listen,
Yeah.
or made me feel this big, or
And what do you say, Terry, when she
so.
says that?
Yeah, I'm glad you
Or
asked
they say
that.
that, sorry.
This
What do you
happened
say when they say that?
just a few days ago. This happened, and I just said, "Oh, well, I wonder what's up with Dad to make him feel like that." I wonder. I wonder. Well, he said something. I said, "Well, it doesn't sound like Dad to say the words you just said. I won't repeat them. I think you might have misheard him, but I don't know." And then later on, I'm in the kitchen, and Dad's there, and my daughter's there, and I said, "So, have you two figured things out?" That's how I handle it. So, what do you reckon to that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I like both what you didn't question her perception,
Right.
but you asked a curious question. I wonder what's up with Dad. And
Mm,
then you clearly said when you're in the kitchen, have you two figured it out?
right.
Which I love, because what I've found is that, I mean, two things. One is that, we've talked before how we think, the universe puts in our path what we need.
Mm,
And because I was so involved, when you say soul parenting, I completely relate to that. And not trusting him to do it right,
mm,
and needing to do it myself, and also being very comfortable in the role of rescuing people. It was, perfect storm.
mm.
But then, she wanted to go to New York, and Dad's in New York.
Yeah, right.
And so now they're there and they have to work it out.
Right.
They have to work it out. And I can't.
Yeah.
I've told them, I said, I think this is an opportunity. I say it carefully because, an opportunity for you to strengthen your relationship with your daughter, because I know if I was there, it wouldn't happen.
Right.
And so it's been good for me to learn I have to detach because I'm, whatever, thousands of miles away. And, I've been thinking too around, what you said around you just need one conscious parent, but the world is not conscious, right? The world is not behaving consciously, quite clearly,
Yeah.
more and more every day. And so it's actually okay for them to have to experience that
Yeah.
from someone they love, because that is life.
And that's where you're learning some resilience, you would hope, as well. So where I might go in and be, soften everything, and coming from a background of helicoptering and disempowering and doing all of the things from a place of
Mm-hmm.
absolute love, thinking I need to protect my child, to suddenly recognizing they're a young adult in the making, and oh my God, I'm not sure how much they even know how to do, and disempowering them to that degree, then to suddenly be able to go, oh, they're having a disagreement with their father, and well, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
good. That's a kind of good wrestling ground, if you like, because they have been
Mm-hmm.
very sheltered. They have throughout their life been very
Mm-hmm.
sheltered, and I do feel it's necessary. So yeah, the world is tough. The world is tough.
And I sometimes can be tough with her, or say my truth, which I think is hard for her to hear, not wanting to hear, which he can do as well. But I think for whatever reason, his boundaries are much clearer than mine.
Right. Yes. Same.
Right. And so if she starts mouthing off like she will, he just like looks at her and
Right.
like clearly with his, don't cross this line with me. I don't want to hear it, and he's right to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's good. It's good because with me, she knows that I sometimes will just, I struggle more with that because I know where it's coming from. And sometimes, we don't have that relationship where
Mm.
I don't know, but it's not necessarily fear, but it's just a different dynamic.
It's really
And
interesting
so,
because mine's slightly different,
yeah.
but my husband, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this because he's fully aware of it. But he does show up with a significant amount of passive aggression. If things aren't going his way, like, oh boy, we all know about it, or there's just a stony silence. And of course, for a very long time, this triggered me to the max because growing up, I had a father who was silent, and it was quite deliberate and unkind, his silence. And I used to say you can cut the atmosphere with a knife in my growing up household. So there was a lot of trauma revisited for a long time in our marriage. But then what I witness now is him kind of giving my daughter a response, or even a non-response, because he's just so sort of focused on what he's doing, or my child's interpretation of that gets all thwarted. And for a long time there was a part of me just going, oh my God, I need to just make this better. Oh, once again,
Yes.
that codependent part of me that was just
You're
like,
and you're a total complete discomfort in those moments was what you
yeah,
wanted to relieve at all costs.
I needed to make that better. And so I would take
Hmm.
them to task. I would take my husband to task. I'd sit him down and, you know, do all the things, and of course friction. And I'm much more comfortable with it these days, in the sense of like, oh, you know what is, you know, it's not, I mean, because yeah, I hated it because my mum always used to say when I was growing up, well, you know what your dad's like. And it wasn't acceptable. What my dad was doing was cruel. It was abhorrent. It was a lot of things that he did that were just not okay. And my mum was going, well, you know what he's like, almost as if you can't help it. He's a bit disabled like that. You know, that was not, you
Hmm.
know,
You just have to
not,
put up with it, and there's just work
yeah,
around it, and nothing you can do. Yeah,
yeah. But,
which
you know,
is not a is the wrong message as
that's
well.
not healthy. That's not healthy.
Yeah,
So for me
yeah,
to actually take those words on took a lot. But when I was able to separate myself from my past experiences and actually look at what was truly going on in our household, there was this gentle, kind man who's quite distractible and very single-minded, a little passive aggressive because, you know, he's not so great at speaking his feelings. And I've got a daughter who's quite sensitive, very sensitive, you know, not getting what she needs from him. And it's okay. It's okay, because once my husband has it pointed out to him that here's your child's understanding of what just happened, you know, he would be mortified. Oh God, you know, okay, yeah, let me do something about that. I can't always do that in the moment, but that might be something we reflect upon at bedtime or something. And then, you know, the next day just check in with our daughter, and then it'd be, you know, and by that point,
yeah,
my daughter's so over it already. She's there's nothing to repair. It's just a
yeah.
simple, like, you know, so I can say, well, you know what your dad's like, you know, which still would leave it open for her to tell me anything that wasn't okay, I hope.
I think a couple things. I think we're talking this. We have a family therapist. We were talking a little bit about this as well the last session, but
Yeah.
I think that you waiting. I mean, there's still a need to reflect back
Yeah.
what you're seeing
Yeah.
in terms of, I think there's a value to sharing that information at a time when the person can hear it.
Yeah. You know, what's
And it sounds
interesting
like
is
your husband there's an openness to that.
there's an openness, but it's interesting because in the past I would have been trying to deal with that in the moment, exactly what you say, and there was a whole load of charge going on, and in everybody's a little dysregulated, and then I'm trying to bring in some, hey, you can't talk to each other like that, you know, some kind of
Yeah.
non-wisdom, but just some me trying to impart some instruction almost. But now
Uh-huh.
what I notice is when I can bring it, when I do bring it, it's just a natural, organic kind of conversation without the emotion attached, but really just dealing in facts. Hey, by the way, you know, yesterday, I don't know exactly what happened. There was an altercation in the kitchen. Eden just mentioned to me she thought you said this, and she was pretty upset. And then you go, oh, well, I didn't say that, you know, and then it would be, okay, you know, it's just facts. Here you go, have that on the plate. I've got no opinion about it. There's no judgment. I'm not telling you what to do, but it's like, here, this happened. That was what, you know, just so.
Yeah. Just so you're aware, right? And I
Mhm.
think in my case, I don't think my husband wants me to know when he is listening to my suggestions. I mean, I
Okay.
have to really disguise them as suggestions because there's a real resistance because he's taking it as a critique of who
Mm.
he is and how he's parenting. And it's hard. He struggles to get past that. And that's just the reality. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it just brought up something that just, you know, I learned very recently, and I know I've shared this with you already, so forgive me repeating myself, but just because we're recording this, the idea that when we've got something that we really feel uncomfortable with, that we really feel needs to be shared, one thing that I was taught very recently about how to share that, which just absolutely changed the way I do things now, which is
Mm.
just to be able to say, okay, there's, you know, something's coming up for me, and I want you to know that this is not, this is all mine. I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to change anything. But I had an experience recently, like when you did this, I felt all of these things, and I can say all the things, and it's all mine. I don't need you to do anything. I'm owning it. But it, you know, I needed to just share that with you, that was what
Hmm.
happened for me when this situation presented. And then I'm not needing to ask him to do anything or to change anything, but you know, he has his own process. and he has his own
Mhm.
sensibilities about it. Because in the same way we can't teach our kids, right? We certainly can't teach our
Mhm.
husbands or our partners anything, right? We're all adults, so nobody wants to be taught, right? But then they're loving parents, they adore their kids in their own way, they have their own way of showing up. But then there's a process that they need to go through upon receiving that information, and it's all theirs. What do you feel about that?
Mhm. Yeah, I like it. I think it's worth trying. And I've tried versions of that. I think sometimes no matter what, he takes it as a critique, right? He thinks it's like a disguise.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that too.
But I think it's really important to share that kind of the charge behind is your own stuff, is your own fear, your own expectations, your own whatever, and share that. And I think it assists, like with our kids, in developing their own process. So I absolutely agree with that.
Magic sentence for
Yes.
me was, I don't need you to do or change anything. And there's because
Yeah.
there's still a part of me when I say it
I
out loud
love that.
saying, yeah, I do. I really, really do need you to change something. There's a part of me that will still
I
shout out.
love that.
But in experimenting with this, what I learned was
Mm,
once I'd said it, that just disappeared from me. Once I'd said those
mm,
words, here's how it makes me
mm,
feel, then that charge just got released. And I was like, oh,
mm.
there was one particular time
Yeah.
I can tell you about that my husband really, really annoyed me with something. I was raging inside. I was so mad. And I sat with it for 5 minutes and I was seething inside. I was so, I'm not saying that's where you're at, but this is
Hmm.
a particular moment
Oh
for me.
yes.
Changed everything. Have you?
Many times.
Well, we're only human. And I had all of this inside of me, and I breathed and I breathed and I breathed. And I'd only very recently learned this, had this teaching. So I thought I'd just try it. And I just tried it. And I said, this isn't yours, this is mine. And I don't need you to do anything. Those are the key words.
Yeah.
And I
I
said,
love that sentence.
when you did blah, 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 I felt like you disrespected me. I felt like you disregarded our child. I felt like I said all of the things. I was still able to say all of the things. I felt this. Now, this isn't yours, this is mine. I know this is my process, but I need you to know, and I don't need you to do anything about it. And that was it. And you know what he said? He said, oh, thank you for telling me that. I said, what? Because I felt like I'd just gone blah and got all of that anger out of me. But what was really interesting was I got his feedback about that, him receiving that. And he really did not take any of it personally. And he realized that next time we're in that situation, he'll probably do it a bit differently, or he'll address things a bit
Yeah.
differently.
I
So
love that. I love that. And I love that. I particularly love the sentence around, I don't need you to do anything
yeah, that's the most
differently. I
important word.
think that's for you and for them. I think too, it's important to just also highlight that sometimes there is a need to take action. And sometimes,
Mm.
because I'm sure you do too. I've had clients that are, it is of course not our position to say at all what they need to do, but there's probably a value in them stepping back and assessing the degree of harm being caused by staying in the
Yeah,
relationship or having the child in vicinity of the parent.
right. Yeah, of course.
Right. And this is something that Shafali always says, like our first duty as a parent is, to protect
Hmm.
our kids and to step in when they are vulnerable beings,
Yeah.
need to be protected, and to
It's,
really assess that, because sometimes we can justify and a lot of things, and sometimes there is a need just to step out and step back.
and that's a really,
So
really,
just to
yeah. I mean, just discerning what those red flags are. Now,
mhm.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't believe those red flags are personal. I think they're not different for every household. At the end of the day, if
Yeah.
it's a threat to physical safety, yeah, if there's violence, if there's abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, we've got to discern. And in those moments, if you're a parent in a situation like that, yeah, what's coming up for you, right? Where's your fear in all of that? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid for your child, or are you afraid for all of the feelings that you've got going on that might pertain to some other experiences you had in your childhood as to why you're staying put, right? That's
Hmm.
a huge topic, right? But yeah, it's important for us to just lay that one down.
Just to kind of highlight that. Yeah. Well, Teri, thank you
Thank
for
you.
your processing with me and your experiences and wisdom. I really appreciate it.
You, my lovely, you too. I get so much from you in every one of our conversations. Always. You're amazing. Yeah, well, thank you. If anybody's listening, thank you.
Likewise.
Okay, here's the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. See you next time.